What's up, everybody? Welcome back to a very special episode 100. Thank you guys for tuning in each and every episode and for letting me keep you company as I continue to put episodes out. You're always there. Thank you guys again. I can't believe that we're at episode 100 already and many more to come. That much I could promise you. Let's do a quick recap of this past weekend's remaining cards that I haven't covered yet. As the Munguia Seremeta card finalized, I was able to get on here and talk to you guys this past weekend, and just within hours, finding myself within hours of the rest of the cards kicking off. It was one of these jam-packed weekends. June 19th was one of these jam-packed weekends that we haven't seen in a very long time. Almost kind of like the Cinco de Mayo weekends of tradition, where you would have the NBA playoffs kicking off, you would have the Kentucky Derby happening, and then one or two good fights happening, or maybe a UFC card, and then a boxing match, a big brand name boxing match. Sports day, big sports day, right? This one was all boxing all day, and to my recent memory, I can't remember of one being so packed. The fact that the Teofimo Cambosos card fell through due to Teofimo reportedly testing positive for COVID earlier in the week, that ended up alleviating some room, and it allowed us to actually focus on the rest of the cards, even though it was still a jam-packed weekend. We'll recap at least the main event, the main fights that took place on each of these promotional events. The Teofimo Lopez Cambosos card ended up getting delayed by 2 months, down to August 14th as a reported date, although there is other reports that it may not stick, that date might not stick. With the recent news, I believe it was Barrera that had a exhibition match against Jesus Soto Karash recently, and now it looks like he's going to be getting in the ring again against Eric Morales. So if that's the case, it looks like they're going to try to stack that exhibition match alongside De La Hoya's recent news of having his own exhibition match happening September 11th against Pride and UFC legend Vitor Belfort. De La Hoya initially tried to get George St. Pierre. Dana White blocked that. That didn't happen. Vitor Belfort stepped in. And it's the recent trend that we're seeing of boxers versus MMA stars. Or the YouTube boxers, right? But the trend seems to be the exhibition, cross-sport exhibitions that are gaining notoriety since Mayweather and McGregor put it out there and laid the foundation for that style matchup a few years back. So De La Hoya looks to be fighting Vitor Belfort September 11th, and the news is that Teofimo Lopez with Triller, since Triller is going to be hosting that fight for De La Hoya Belfort, they might not stick with August 14th, because August 14th may very well be another repetition of this past Saturday, which is going to be a boxing heavy day. There's multiple cards. Top Rank will have their own card. I believe Golden Boy's going to have their own card by way of DAZN, and Matchroom will have their own card by way of DAZN as well on that same day. And then the Triller card, of course. So that would be too much. We'll see if it sticks to August 14th. It reminds me of this past Saturday's Jaime Munguia with Maciej Sulecki from back in April, delayed by 2 months, and the entire card got delayed. There's a lot of fighters there that have been mid-training camp, were done with their training camps, and then this ended up throwing it off. And because the main event fell through for this Triller event, the entire roster was affected and now delayed by another 2 months. So we'll see. We'll see if that date sticks out. Also, before we jump in, I'll cover this at the end. Hopefully it doesn't skip my mind. I'll cover this at the end as far as some recent headlines that caught my eye and that may have gone over your head as well. But they caught my eye, and I'll bring them up, and you could go ahead and do your research on those and have fun researching those stories. But cool. So let's jump in. The first one right off the bat, Jermall Charlo against Juan Macias Montiel. On the co-main event slot, it was Isaac Pitbull Cruz, co-main event to Charlo and Montiel. Isaac Pitbull Cruz versus Francisco Vargas, El Bandido. It was great to see Francisco Vargas there. This was a rugged tough style brawl, more so than a boxing match. Francisco Vargas from the onset tried to make this into a boxing match, tried to turn it into a boxing match, and he couldn't. Isaac Cruz is his nickname is very fitting. He's a small pitbull. He goes forward and he throws everything. I mean, the reason I say it was more of a brawl than a boxing match, it reminded me almost of Lomachenko against Salido. The way that Salido fought Lomachenko, he just made it rough and dirty, and just didn't allow him to get his rhythm, to find his rhythm in the ring. That was the case of what Cruz inflicted on Vargas this past Saturday. He's just rough. He came forward. I mean, you had forearms landing, you had clinches, you had headbutts. The final cut was caused by a headbutt on Vargas being the victim of that cut. As the fight was dwindling down, as it was coming to an end, and he still walks away with a cut. I mean, you had it all. There's inside punching, the headbutts, the clinching, the forearms. Every part of Cruz is just banging on you and just hitting you. It's just rough, rugged style of fight that has been successful to date for Isaac Cruz. And Francisco Vargas, a veteran in the sport and a very good boxer himself, was not able to sustain that and inflict his own rhythm of boxing and gain his spacing. Isaac Cruz was just too much. He ended up coming away with the nod. It was an entertaining fight, but it was very interrupted, and it was very rough to watch, I guess, at times, because it almost looked like they were about to get into a good flow numerous times during the fight, and then it would be interrupted by a clinch or by the referee stepping in and separating, so forth. It sucks that Francisco Vargas suffered his third defeat. His prior two defeats came at the hand of none other than Miguel Berchelt, and both stoppages at that. Now he has his third loss, this one by a decision nod into the favor of Isaac Cruz. And for Isaac Cruz, I mean, he's just a head-on collision waiting to happen. He's an action fighter, that's for sure. And I don't know what's next for him, but you definitely want to watch. You definitely want to watch, because he's like a mini version of a old school Tyson. You know, he's like a mini Tyson, where he just puts his head down and just lets those punches fly. And he has strength. He has a lot of strength behind that punching, a lot of punch power. So that was the co-main event. We move on to the main event, where Juan Macias Montiel lived up to the moment. He knew what he was stepping into the ring to do. His mission was to get his hands around that belt, and he stepped up. He lived up to the moment. He recognized the moment and fought that way. And this was a creation of a perfect storm, where neither fighter was going to be taking the L that day or willing to submit to the other that day by being stopped, by being hurt, by taking a knee, or by bowing out early in the fight. Charlo, to me, I mean, look, the fight already happened and the criticism kicked off right away. There were critics from the onset. As soon as the final bell rang, Charlo's this, Charlo's that. If he struggled with a nobody like Montiel, how's he gonna hang with the top names? And blah blah blah. You heard all this. Charlo, in my opinion, boxed great. There's a lot of positives from Charlo. Yes, he went all the way with this guy. He went all the way with Derevchenko as well, a very good boxer. He went all the way with Montiel, but Montiel stepped up to the name. Could it be that Charlo ended up playing down or boxing down to the level of opposition? I don't think so. And I'll tell you why. This is what people are claiming, that Charlo didn't take this guy out when he should have. On the last episode, when I was right as the Munguia fight ended, I was telling you I saw this fight ending around the 6th round, with Charlo stopping Montiel just by way of output. Just by way of boxing, speed, and output, I saw Charlo stopping Montiel. It played that way. It definitely played out that way. Charlo with the more output, with the more punches. If for those people that didn't watch the fight, it's real easy to jump on the bandwagon and just start criticizing Charlo. For the people that are just reading the headlines, looking at the scorecards, and watching a 2-minute highlight video that may be available, you could just make your opinion based on that, and it's wrong. You had to have watched the fight. The positives for Charlo is that when he recognized that Montiel, and this is a key moment for any boxer, Not every boxer recognizes this. Not every boxer is able to recognize when their opponent is in danger, or they recognize it a second too late, or a few seconds too late, or the final bell rings, and they end up missing that opening right there, that door to eliminating their opponent, getting them out. Charlo recognized it and jumped on it. And that happened in the 5th round. And again, in the 6th round. From the onset, Charlo gained his space, gained his rhythm. He took control of the fight. He set the pace of the fight. Started out punching. They had several exchanges early in the fight where Charlo was getting the better of him. Montiel was landing really good uppercuts and still sneaking in some good, strong right hands in there and hurting Charlo at that. But Charlo was just throwing punches and bunches, and he was winning these rounds. There was no way that by the 12th round, the Montiel was going to win this on the scorecards. That's how good of a boxing showing Charlo did. He represented himself well. What I really like about Charlo is that he recognized that Montiel was hurt in the 5th round and went after him immediately. Didn't even hesitate. Went after him and just threw everything he could at him and couldn't get rid of him. By the 6th, he hurts him again. He recognizes it again and goes after Montiel and tries to eliminate him. This is it. He needed to close the show, and he was unable to. This doesn't mean that Charlo lacks punching power, that Charlo lacks boxing IQ, nothing. Give the credit to Montiel, who was willing to do anything to survive that fight, to not take a knee or to bow out early. This is credit to Montiel. This is not a punching bag. This was not Nakatila versus Stevenson. Montiel was there and he was hurting Charlo. And by the end of the fight, look at Charlo's right eye and it was nearly shut. That's how good Montiel was boxing. Even though his output was minimal, which we knew going into this fight, that's Montiel's style. This is the same Montiel that took out Kirkland. This is the same Montiel that we've seen in the past. And this would have been the same Montiel whether he found himself in there against Triple G or Andrade, which people are now comparing to Charlo, or at least people calling for that fight. That's a fight that's been happening years back, right? That people have been calling for. It hasn't happened. Hopefully we see it now. But this is the same version of Montiel that would be in there against Munguia should he rematch him or anybody else. This is his style. He doesn't have large output numbers, but he hurts people. He has good power. He has good punch placement, but he gets hit a lot. And Charlo took advantage of that. Is it to the detriment of Charlo that he was unable to get him out? No. Give credit to Montiel. The positive is that Charlo recognized that. His instincts are there. He recognized that he threw everything at Montiel. Anybody else would have gone down. Anybody else that night would have gone down. Charlo hit him with everything. He did everything. Now, if that was Montiel, and instead of Charlo, we had Triple G going after Montiel in the 5th round, or even the 6th round at that, I believe, and it's just my opinion, I believe that Triple G, just because of his body of work, would have taken out Montiel. Not because he hits harder. Maybe he does. I think he does. Than Charlo. But it's not just the punching power, it's the punch placement. It's the selection of punches. Golovkin would not have headhunted Montiel so much against the ropes. He would have chopped the body. And he would have hurt him and possibly broken a rib and dropped him. That's the difference. In Andrade with the Montiel against the ropes, we just saw it 2 months ago against Liam Williams. Andrade having his opponent troubled against the ropes ends up in a clinch. Ends up in a head clash or a clinch. And tries to box from the inside. That's the other champion in the division. Charlo actually tried to eliminate his opponent, but he couldn't. So that's not a detriment to him, and I don't understand why people are criticizing Charlo, but whatever. Everything's headlines and bait, right? Just to get viewers in there like, oh, now they're hating on Charlo again. Let me click on this. Like, it's BS. Charlo boxed beautifully, and the scorecard reflected it. His punch stat numbers reflected it. He boxed beautifully. He just had an opponent that lived up to the moment, that recognized that he was in a championship fight and was not going to bow out early. And that's what created that perfect storm where Charlo, thinking that he was going to be in an easy fight and in an easy showing on Saturday night, ended up running into a wall, a brick wall that was punching back at him and that was not going to give way. That's the other positive that it walked away from Charlo. Why I think that he's one of the better champions and the better boxers in the 160 division. because he adapted, he recognized, and he had that knowledge. You could see the momentum never shifted, but there was flashes there of doubt on the Charlo end after the 6th round. Because he possibly punched himself out. He threw everything at Montiel in the 5th and in the 6th, and he possibly punched himself out. So by the 7th round, there was doubts, like, I'm hitting this guy with everything, and he's not bowing out. And it's almost like he had that moment of just self-admitting that this is going to be a long night. And once he was okay with that, he continued with the similar output and finished the fight with the same rhythm and same pace that he set from the opening bell. By the 8th round, Montiel ends up hurting Charlo, hits him right on the forehead, and staggers Charlo. And it looked like Montiel was going to be headed for an upset. It was a good punch that he landed, and it was a consistent punch and work that Montiel kept chopping away at Charlo. Even though it was minimal output, he continuously hurt Charlo, and that was one of the more evident moments in the fight where he really hurt Charlo, and then he continued focusing on that right eye of Charlo, having success, hence why Charlo's eye ended up nearly shut by the end of the fight. By the 9th, Montiel failed to capitalize on it. Charlo started getting a second wind again and finished the fight with the same pace, like I keep saying, with the same rhythm and same pace and same amount of output. Boxing great. And he wasn't clinching. This wasn't a clinch fest. He could have, when he was hurt, he could have done that. We've seen it in the past. It becomes a clinch fest, and he begins to box from the outside and move and bob and weave and stay away from the opponent and so forth, and just win the rounds in a minimalist way. Charlo was in there. He was engaged the entire fight. He was willing to take the fight to Montiel, and Montiel was taking the fight right back to him. That's why this fight was so entertaining to me, and that's why I don't agree with all the criticism that Charlo's taking right now. He boxed great. Deservingly so. He boxed great. So we move on from that. Will we see him against Andrade? Maybe. Will we see him against Triple G? Maybe. It may happen. It may not happen. We don't know. But I see Andrade against Montiel. If that Andrade that we saw 2 months ago against Liam Williams was fighting Montiel this past Saturday, he exposes his head a lot. He dips his head a lot. And he would have been exposed and open for those uppercuts. If Montiel landed that many uppercuts on Charlo, who has better defense in my opinion than Andrade, he would have had a lot of success against Andrade, and very likely could have hurt and staggered Andrade as well, possibly even dropping him, because Andrade keeps his head down low, he stays down low, he fights awkward, and he keeps his head exposed a lot more, and that's to the detriment of Andrade. That's just something that I've picked up from his last few fights that he continues to do. And a fighter like this that's headhunting from the bottom, from down low by way of uppercut, he would have exposed that. With Triple G, Charlo and Triple G, I think it would be a great fight. The height, the speed would go to Charlo. The punching power, I think, would be somewhat similar, although I give the nod to Triple G. But I think it would come down to IQ and punch placement. I think Triple G mixes up his boxing fairly well, where Charlo still gets caught and baited into that headhunting game a little bit too much, and wastes a lot of opportunities. Although he has good body work, he wastes several opportunities that you could catch throughout the fight by continuing to headhunt, which happened this past Saturday. So congratulations to Charlo. To me, he's one of the better boxers at the 160 division. And I think Charlo would definitely beat Andrade, even though people choose to dismiss that. That's why we got to see the fight. But right now, mark my words, if Charlo and Andrade were to get in the ring and unify, which I hope does happen, I give the nod to Jermall. Against Golovkin, I don't know. I'll have to wait to see once we get close to that fight. It looks like Triple G is looking to unify the WBA versions of the titles with Ryota Murata. If that ends up happening, well, Triple G is going to be booked, and let's hope that we get Andrade and Charlo once and for all and put an end to that argument. I think the length, I think the boxing style of Andrade is very awkward, effective in his own right because he's still undefeated to date, but I don't see him outboxing Charlo one bit. Maybe he has a power over Charlo, but I think it would be a boxing fight, not a brawl. And I think Charlo would get the better of Andre. So let's move on. The top rank card. This is the other big card that happened that night. The Monster Inoue against Michael Dasmarinas. Michael Dasmarinas, long, rangy, good punching power, but often gets baited on the inside fight. Didn't happen much on this one, except it looks like he overlooked Inoue's power a little bit and Inoue's height at that, and he chose to fight taller than he should have, in my opinion. He chose to fight taller, try to keep Inoue at a distance, but he was unable to keep Inoue at a distance. Inoue's speed was constantly getting in on and creating an inside fight, which was uncomfortable for Dasmarinas, and it ended up stopping and being the detriment to Dasmarinas because Inoue ends up hurting that body. If he didn't break Dasmarinas' ribs, it definitely looked painful, and it definitely looked like he did break a couple ribs, if not even just one rib, but those punches looked really, really painful that he landed on there. Just the expression on Dasmarinas' head when he got hit on that right side, and then he took the knee, the expression was just second to none. It was just hard to watch, and then he would get up. To the credit of Dasmarinas, the warrior that he is, he got up, he wanted to continue on fighting, but Inoue just continued to fight those spots. He mixes his punches very well. He ends up landing the right punches at the right time, which is just like I was saying about Triple G, the punch placement, the IQ behind the punch placement and being successful at it, where he places his punches fairly well and connects at that enough to be able to get the opponent to move their guard either up or down. So when they expose the body, they recognize it quickly, and they're basically having these opponents fall into their traps. They set these traps really, really good, Triple G and the Monster. I mean, this is who we're talking about right now, the Monster. All credit to him. He continues to look impressive, and I just don't see him slowing down in the near future. The news that came down as this fight was going on was that Al Heyman and PBC end up pulling Rigondeaux out of the Casimero fight. That fight that was supposed to happen here in August. I think that's the other fight that's happening August 14th, if I remember correctly. Anyways, Al Heyman and PBC step in. They move Rigondeaux away from the main event, put him in a co-main event card with an opponent to be announced, and end up inserting Nonito Donaire, who recently got the title from Ubali, from Nordin Ubali. Now he's going to be unifying against Casimero, and it sucks that the promotional companies end up doing this. They're having just as much flex and power as the sanctioning bodies now with doing whatever the hell they want. But to the credit of Al Heyman, here's another title fight that he just created. So I'm 50-50 with that decision. Of course, I want to see Nonito Donaire in there with the best. It looks like the co-main event will have Rigondeaux against an opponent to be announced soon. And it looks like if Rigondeaux is successful, he will fight the winner of that main event, that new main event between Nonito and John Rio Casimero. And then from there, that winner would end up fighting Inoue in a winner-take-all type fight. So we'll see how that plays out. That's what's happening. That was the most recent news. Sucks for Rigondeaux, but I'll be pulling for Nonito against John Riel in a countryman fight, a big fight for the Philippines. And I hope I don't get it wrong, but I really believe that that's August 14th also, when that's supposed to be happening. On the co-main event, Mikaela Mayer ends up fighting Erica Farias, and this is one of the toughest tests that she's had to date. Erica Farias, true and tried veteran of the sport, former 2-division champion, and ended up giving everything she had to Mikaela Mayer, provided some new tests for her, some new looks for Mikaela Mayer, caught her several times with really good punches. But Mikaela Mayer is on her point right now. She's at the highest peak of her career right now. She's experiencing a peak, and she still has a lot of growth to experience. She still has a lot of room to grow, and she has a lot to refine. Her boxing still needs to be refined a little bit more, but it's coming along well, and it shows well. She performs well. She puts her punches together very good. Her spacing is pretty good, and she's able to read the opponent when they're trying to come in fairly good right now. There's still some awkward moments there. There's still some moments I would say to place it better. There's a lack of fluidity there on behalf of Mikaela Mayer's boxing, but it's getting there. It's getting there, and she was able to impose her style and come away with the nod. She defended. This was her first defense of the WBO title, and she did so successfully against a veteran in Erica Farias. So congratulations to Mayer. That was an awesome co-main event fight as well. And then the opener to the ESPN was Isaac Dogbo trying to get back into title contention. He fights a young prospect in Adam Lopez. And this is already being nodded as a potential fight of the year candidate. It was that good. It was a firefight, and I said it as the Munguia card ended on the last episode. If there's a way to open up a boxing event and a boxing card, a televised portion of it at least, this is the way to do it. Isaac Dogbo, Adam Lopez did not disappoint, and they went down to the final bell, just swinging. Adam Lopez getting the best of Isaac Dogbo down the stretch. Dogbe is how they were pronouncing it. I don't know. I see Dogbo. I'm going to say Dogbo. If it's Dogbe, I hope he doesn't take any disrespect to this, if he even knows this platform at all. But he boxed beautifully. They fought beautifully. It was an exchange after exchange, and it was a fireworks type of fight. And now it looks like Isaac Dogbo is going to get possibly seeking that trilogy fight against El Vaquero Navarrete, the cowboy. So if that ends up happening, that was a great, and those were great fights as well. And he's right there. And to the credit of Adam Lopez, that as young of a prospect as he is, he's already holding his own against the top dogs in that division. I can't wait to see him back in the ring as well. So before we close this, let's look at the exhibition fight. This was a final card. This was going to be the fifth that moved up to the fourth card of the night. This happened in Mexico. Now, Chavez Sr. ended up having this exhibition match where there was going to be no winner announced. That ended up being a circus show on its own against Hector Camacho Jr. They go at it. At one point, they remove their helmets. They act like they're really angry with each other and they're going to fight each other, and they're pushing and shoving. They connected some decent punches. They had some good boxing moments in there where it looked like Chavez was hitting fairly hard. He still has a lot of power behind those punches and behind that body work. He hurt Camacho Jr. several times throughout that fight. And even though they didn't announce a winner, it looks like Chavez got the best of the younger Camacho Jr. They end up pulling Canelo. Canelo was present that night because of his younger brother, fighting on the undercard of that fight. Canelo ends up going up to the ring, and he has a moment there with Chavez Sr. And right away you saw the comments, almost like Chavez Sr. has disavowed his own children and now chooses Canelo to be his son. It was a circus show. If there's ever been one, this was it. That main event, at least. Then on the co-main event, Chavez Jr. fights Anderson Silva, and this is a boxing match at that. Anderson the Spider Silva outboxes, outpoints, outpunches Chavez Jr. and gets the nod, gets the decision win against a former boxing champion in Chavez Jr. who missed weight. This is supposed to be the professional who's supposed to give the welcoming to the MMA guy, the former MMA champ and legendary champ at that, Anderson Silva. Chavez Jr. is supposed to give him the welcoming and represent his sport well. And surprise, surprise, he misses weight. It was reported that he lost $100,000 out of his purse because he missed weight. And then he loses a fight. He had brief glimpses of old Chavez Jr. when he used to be taking the sport serious in years past. But Anderson Silva actually boxes really, really good and outpointed Chavez. And what can you expect? He's a legend of the sport. He's a legend of MMA and mixed martial artist he is. He boxed beautifully. He utilized the portion of boxing, of out of his mixed martial arts arsenal, and he put it together well, and he beat Chavez Jr. On the third card and the third fight leading up to the Anderson Silva was another Chavez. This was the younger brother of Chavez Jr. and the younger son of Chavez, who boxes. Omar Chavez had a trilogy fight against Ramon Alvarez, who is a younger brother of Canelo. In the first fight years back, I believe it was 2014 when they first faced each other, and there was a lot of hype behind this fight. Alvarez ended up getting the best of Omar Chavez. And they end up rematching several years later. Omar Chavez ends up getting the best of Alvarez, in which the fight was stopped early due to a cut. And now this was the trilogy fight between the two. It was a bloody mess, with Alvarez getting the better of the young Chavez and getting the decision win over the young Chavez. It was a bloody match. There was some good punches exchanged. And cuts. They definitely marked each other up. They hit each other with everything. And it was a limited style of boxing. It was very, definitely not the top echelon. This is definitely what I would call C-level style boxing. Nonetheless, they put it together well against one another. They seem to match up well against one another, and they leave it all out there. So that's credit to them. So they end up doing well. They represent themselves as well as they could have, and it goes to decision. And the Alvarez brother wins over Omar Chavez, and that was that. It was a jam-packed weekend. And it was entertaining at that. I think my time, I ended up watching, by the time I finished with the final card as I was getting it, I think it had already ended, but it was barely airing on my side of the country, close to 11 o'clock at night. And I think I must have finished maybe around midnight or so, after I started really early, around noon, I believe, is when I started. So it was about 12 hours of nonstop watching fight after fight, with a few breaks here and there, which is how I was able to get on the microphone here with you guys. So it was a jam-packed event. Of course, Jaime Munguia, on the previous episode, we covered how he ended up coming out successful against Cerameta. Marlene Sparza got her hands around her first big major world title. And so that's that. That was a fun Saturday. And it looks like August 14th is setting up to be another one. So just 2 months from now, a little bit less than 2 months from now. Some of the headlines, and I'm glad it didn't skip my mind here. I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, go ahead and research this. Have fun looking into this. One of the headlines that caught my eye was that Alexander Povetkin has now retired. And this happened a couple weeks ago. Alexander Povetkin is retiring from the sport after having those back-to-back entertaining fights against Dillian White. So it sucks. A true veteran of the sport, very decorated boxer, heavyweight boxer at that, former champion, and he decides to call it a day. So that's one of the headlines. Claressa Shields debuted. Her MMA debut was successful. It was a success. She won her first fight, and this is under the PFL, the Professional Fighters League brand, which you've seen a lot of fighters going there now, or former UFC stars going there. Former UFC and Bellator star going there, and Rory McDonald, Anthony Pettis ended up going there. So you got several fighters that have gone that way, and Claressa Shields starting her MMA career and started it well. She ends up she's already 1-0 in MMA and ended up being successful in her debut. If you haven't checked out the PFL, they're usually on ESPN. Check out the PFL because it's a different format. They take the traditional sports format where it's like a regular season with a playoff type and then a finals type card for each one of these divisions. Kyla Harrison, of course, is the monster there in the women's division. It's a fun league. It's a fun premise and a fun league to watch. So if you haven't checked out the PFL, check them out. Another headline, Felix Sturm. Yep. Felix Sturm ended up fighting and ended up winning once again against up-and-coming fighter James Kraft. also out of Germany. James Kraft went into this fight with a 19-0 record, and now he picks up his first loss against the veteran of the sport, Felix Sturm. This was fought at 175 pounds. Kraft came in at 174 pounds. Felix Sturm at 173. It goes all the way to decision. Felix Sturm moves up to 40. He got his 42nd win of his career. 5 losses, 3 draws, 18 of those wins coming by way of knockout. And this is his recent opponent. We last talked about him back in December when he faced Timo Rost, an up-and-coming boxer. Now he faced James Kraft with a little bit better record. And but same style boxing as Timo Rost, in my opinion. Just not there yet, So Felix Sturm, his experience is carrying him through these. Nonetheless, both of these last 2 fights went all the way. His comeback as he's starting to get his comeback in motion. This is his 2nd fight since he's come back, and another decision win for Felix Sturm. So that's one of the ones that caught my eye. If you didn't know that he was back, go look, see if you could find some highlights on that fight and do some reading on that. Most people didn't, right? And the other one that was supposed to come back, or that did come back actually, and had 2 fights, was Sergio Martinez, former 160-pound king years back, and he's I don't know what's going on. I try to keep track with Sergio Martinez. It looks like he's doing some acting. It looks like he's doing some training. He's constantly doing interviews and so forth, but he's always training. He's always showing himself in the gym. I don't know if he has an upcoming fight. I don't see anything scheduled as of yet. I don't know if he's going to plan on continuing his comeback or not, but he was successful in the two matches, similar to what Felix Sturm is putting together now. We'll see if we see Sergio Martinez back this year. He came back last August of 2020, and here we are in mid-June, and he hasn't fought yet. The other fighter that caught my eye, I had no idea that he was active. He's been campaigning at the 168-pound division now, and this was the 3rd fight that he's had in the 168-pound division. With his first one, when he first moved up, was in 2019, December of 2019, against Max Bursak, in which he was successful. He came away with the win on that one. That was a really, really fun fight in the 168-pound division. David Lemieux, that's who I'm talking about. David Lemieux beats Max Bursak December of 19 in what was an entertaining fight where Lemieux ended up going down in the 1st and the 5th round. Bursak went down in the 6th, and Lemieux ends up getting the nod in the scorecards when it was all said and done. His second fight was against Francis Ntetu, and he ended up being successful in that one, where he stopped Ntetu in 5 rounds. And now he ended up going to Cuernavaca, Mexico, where nobody knew. I had no idea that he was fighting until I just started looking up these random boxers and events that happened, and I come across David Lemieux. I actually ended up watching the fight after it happened, and this was on the Friday leading to the big Mayweather-Logan Paul card. So that fight ended up happening on a Sunday. This happened on a Friday evening, and he fought David Segarra, a journeyman fighter, going into that fight with a 34-4 record. And this was just a brawl. If the best way I could put it, it lasted 2 rounds. This was a Peruvian fighter and David Segarra. The fight lasted 2 rounds, where it was just a firefight. David Lemieux went in there, not like a boxer, but like a brawler. This looked like a tough man contest. Go ahead and check that fight out. It's entertaining at that. It lasts 2 rounds. The referee ends up waving it off, deeming that the Peruvian fighter had taken too much damage. David Lemieux comes away with another win, and this is his 3rd win in a row in the 168-pound division. Hopefully we see him with a little better opposition in that division. Maybe he could give a welcoming to up-and-coming Edgar Berlanga. So who knows? So those are some of the big headlines that caught my eye. Check those out. Check those fights out. Felix Sturm, David Lemieux. Check out Alexander Povetkin's retirement. And then all the recent announcements, right? Nonito Donaire stepping in for Rigondeaux now into the main event against John Rio Casimero. Teofimo Lopez and the confusion going on between him and Cambosos, if they're actually going to hold the card on August 14th or if it's going to be delayed. Marco Antonio Barrera fighting Jesus Soto Caras, and now it looks like he's headed into a fourth fight against Eric Morales, at least an exhibition type fight. What else? I hope I'm not missing much. I know I mentioned Mayweather and Logan Paul. I didn't talk much about that fight. Although we saw Hurd lose to Luis Arias on that one. Hurd was trying to get the winner of Castaño and Jermell Charlo in that unification bout that's up and coming here in a few weeks' time. Hurd trying to get in there, and Luis Arias has thrown a wrench in the plans of Hurd and in his career. Luis Arias has fought the likes of Gabe Rosado, and he's been a journeyman at that as well, and not quite to the gatekeeper status, but he's definitely a journeyman, and he gives a tough showing each time out. And now he threw a wrench in the career and the plans of Hurd, and that derails his plans a little bit of trying to get himself into title fighting, regain his titles in the near future at least. Luis Arias left a Rocky-style performance that night against Hurd, and that was on the undercard of the Mayweather Logan Paul. By the way, my opinion of these trend fights of the YouTube boxing stars, YouTube MMA stars, former boxing stars against former MMA legends. Listen, the trend seems to be catchy. The trend seems to be on an uphill right now, and it seems to be experiencing a good moment. The Mayweather-Paul fight was entertaining at that, and who am I to hate? My opinion has been shifting a little bit on that, but like Mayweather said, this is legalized bank robbery. He walked away reportedly with close to $100 million, if not over. Logan Paul reportedly made approximately $20 million. They ended up getting a successful 1 million views, as it was reported. So this is not the Triller style numbers where they're a little bit skewed or a lot skewed at that. These guys were legit. Showtime put on a good event with good boxers. Badu Jack was also on the undercard that night, and he was successful himself. Hurd ended up not being successful. He ends up losing. So it is what it is, right? I mean, that's how that ended up playing out. It was entertaining. Mayweather, Logan Paul was entertaining at that. And for those people that are still tuning in to see Mayweather lose, well, they're the ones making these events successful because they're the ones buying the tickets and buying the pay-per-views and so forth. Luckily, one of my buddies ended up getting it. I didn't contribute any money to it, but I did go see it, and I'm giving you my honest opinion. It was entertaining. The main event was entertaining, and Mayweather knows exactly what he's doing. He's a marketing genius. He knows what he's doing, and congratulations to him because they just made boatloads of money for everybody. Showtime, for themselves, you name it. And they continue to bring more eyes to the sport of boxing. So with that, I leave you guys. There's more boxing coming up later this week with Gervonta Davis and Mario Barrios as they're going for a version of the WBA title. Of course, the king in that division is recently crowned King Josh Taylor, who recently defeated Ramirez for all the belts and all the glory in that division. This is going to be a version of the WBA title because they have a ton or a dozen titles in each division. And then who else do we have? Lomachenko returns this weekend against Nakatani. We saw Nakatani give hell to Teofimo Lopez, and we saw Nakatani in what should have been the fight of the year, in my opinion. It took second or third to Cepeda Berencek, but Nakatani Verdejo, Felix Verdejo, who is now in a bunch of legal trouble and and now has that's a whole story of its own, but Nakatani Verdejo was an entertaining fight in which Felix Verdejo was looking really good in that fight and ends up losing, ends up getting stopped and knocked into next year. Nakatani just put a beating on Verdejo to that, and he handled a beating himself. He put up with a lot of strong hits and he got dropped, and that was an entertaining fight this past December, if I remember correctly. There's been so much boxing that I lose track of time. But Nakatani is a tough test for anybody, as he's proven. His body of work is second to none. And now he's going to go in there against the Matrix and Lomachenko. And that's going to be coming this weekend. So 2 great fights this coming Saturday. And I'll see if I don't do a preview episode, I'll do a recap episode or maybe get on there as the fights are taking place. So with that, I leave you guys. Long episode, but there was a lot to cover, guys. Long episode, a lot to cover. And if this is going to be the 100th episode, which it is, there's no other way to it but to make a jam-packed episode and bring a full episode to you guys. I hope I continue to do right by you guys according to the downloads and the views and the follows. It's playing out that way. So I owe this to you guys. I will continue to do my best for you guys. We're 100 episodes in, and I hope you guys will tune in for the next 100 episodes and be by my side for the next 100 episodes. Yes, it's a small platform, but we continue to grow, and this is all due to you and your support and the love that you guys have shown me. My love right back to you guys. Salud from I have a little bit of a Shieldag brand whiskey in my glass left here. So I cheers to you from afar, and thank you guys for all the support, for all the love, and for getting me to 100 episodes. And here's to 100 more. Salud.